Yesterday, there was an emergency all-hands meeting at Disney Animation Studios Burbank over the revelation that Walt Disney Animation Studios Vancouver, that's in Canada, has 400 staff members. That is a massive amount that apparently the animation studios in Burbank were not aware of. Let's talk about the entire situation with Moana 2 right now here on That Park Place. Good morning. I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place. I am working in tandem today with Mr. Vash Sky. Vash, you've done some pretty good investigation of this yourself today.
Indeed I have. It all caught us off guard when they announced this at the earnings call, and we've been playing catch-up ever since. So I felt it best to not only correct the record in our reporting before, but also take a really deep dive into what we know so far, and combine that with some of the reporting from Film Threat and so forth. I mean, I think we have a really clear picture than we did before.
Yes, and we need to give a lot of credit to Alan Ng and Chris Gore over at Film Threat. They're doing some very good work over there. Just to give context to anyone who hasn't been following over the last 3 days, 2 days actually, not even 36 hours. Wait. What am I saying here? Not even 72 hours. Moana 2 has been announced by the Walt Disney Company, and it is a repurposing of the Disney Plus television series, Moana, the series that was probably going to go on to Disney Plus sometime this year. There was a November slot in the schedule since Disney has a drought of movies right now. They only had 3 movies under the Disney banner that were going to release this year, that being Inside Out 2 from Pixar, Deadpool 3 from Marvel, and Mufasa the Lion King from an unnamed Disney animation studio that is not Walt Disney Animated Features. Right. So there was this extra slot hanging out there. They had announced Frozen 3, the sequel to Toy Story, the next Toy Story movie, because they refused to say the words Toy Story number 5 on the earnings call. And of course...
could be a spinoff too, you never know.
Yeah, Zootopia 2 is the other one. So they're working feverishly to try to come up with something that you will watch that will remind you of something else that was successful for the company. In the case of Moana 2, they are freely admitting that they are repurposing the existing TV series. I wonder why they have done this. There's been a history in the past of Disney repurposing television properties like Atlantis: Milo's Return. That was considered the direct-to-DVD sequel to Atlantis, but what it really was like 3 episodes of an animated series that they probably were intending for the Disney afternoon, if we can incorporate that into this. Is there any other history we need to get into before we get into Film Threat's article here?
Well, I think the one of the more famous examples of this occurring, slightly differently, of course, Toy Story 2. Before it was destined to the big screen, it was supposed to be some, I don't know, made-for-TV movie, I believe, or
that's a
DVD sequel or something.
Yeah, I would say that is the easiest way to describe that before we get into that Pixar actually had a Toy Story 2 after. I believe they were threatened. Maybe that was, what was it, Circle 7 or one of Disney's own animation studios, back when Pixar and Disney were separate animation studios, not owned owned by the same company.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen until 2007, right?
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. But of course that ended up that they retooled the entire series. Now, that being said, that could be what's going on here. But let's get into the information that we have. This one from Film Threat. Disney opens new animation studio in Vancouver, British Columbia. Film Threat prophecy fulfilled. This by Film Threat staff, February 8th, 2024. As a result of the series of D-Files, the D-Files, editor-in-chief Alan Ng made an ominous prediction that the entire animation industry is headed in 2 directions, overseas and AI. This is my own comment here. Yes, absolutely right. And that agrees with everything that I've observed, everything that our amazing sources have told us.
Yes.
The overseas component of that prophecy has just been fulfilled as Walt Disney Animation has opened a new studio in Vancouver, British Columbia. Granted, not quite overseas. I was going to ask, yeah. And their first significant feature animated film is Moana 2. The Vancouver studio has operated for over a year and a half. Very true. On the heels of Disney's announcement of Moana 2, the press release does not mention the new studio. Interestingly, the news comes by way of Walt Disney Animation Studios artistic director Malcolm Pierce's Instagram account. And Malcolm Pierce, with the way that Instagram works on on browsers. I'm glad to have this here.
Yeah.
But as we can see, this is a zoomed in picture of Moana from the concept art. So he's being careful and only using publicly released imagery. It's a new
Oh
costume
yes.
for Moana. I see right there. By the way, Vash, did you have something there before we read?
Oh no, I personally agree with you, and I do like how they actually took the text from the Instagram post and put it right beneath the photo. That
Yes.
makes it a lot easier for us for sure. Keywords obviously, but yeah, new this artwork definitely attached to there. We commented on that before, but yeah, new costume for Moana, and maybe even a look at some of the new characters that they're introducing with this film.
Yes, yes. Now, that being said, let's get into it. A year and a half ago, we decided to embark on an incredible voyage, setting sail to Vancouver, British Columbia, determined to build a second animation studio that can continue Walt Disney Animation Studios' incredible legacy. Our first project, Moana 2. We gathered the wonderfully talented Moana leadership team and began assembling the crew. In just 1 year, our team grew to over 100 strong as we began to bring these beloved characters to life. Today, we stand proud with a team of 400 plus artists, engineers, and technicians embarking on our first theatrical release. The announcement of Moana 2 hit me harder than expected today, reminding me of the journey we've undertaken since setting sail past the reef. I couldn't be more proud of the studio and the extraordinary stories we'll bring to the world. That's that's a heavy statement that was just there. And by the way, good for you, Mr. Pierce. It takes a lot to build an organization like this. I'm hoping that you had time to vet all of the people that you're bringing in as far as their talent goes. It sounds like, for reasons that we're about to get into as we go through this article and some other things that we've consolidated here for our viewers, it sounds like you've got a big task ahead of you here in the coming weeks. Vash,
Oh,
do you have any comment
massive.
before we proceed?
No, it's a massive task, and I believe to comment on the studio a little bit. I mean, he relays it there, talks about starting at a place of 100. We know that the studio opened about 2022. Is that right? And then now it's
Yes.
about 400 strong. That's about a 400% increase in less than 2 years. I remember you telling me about this a little ways back. So we've known about this Vancouver studio for a little while, and that it was ramping up. But I guess this even took Disney, at least the Walt Disney Animation staff in Burbank, by surprise. Is that right?
Yes, yes, and we'll get into that right now. Is this the good news first? Why is Disney opening a new studio in Canada? Second, why is Disney corporate not making this public? They definitely didn't talk about it on the earnings call. They definitely did not talk about it on the earnings call. This
No.
news was so secretive that Walt Disney Animation just held an all hands meeting in Burbank to reveal that Vancouver would not only be the lead studio on Moana 2, but that its staff had ballooned to 400 members. Of course, they assured Burbank they would partner up on Moana. There's been, as we understand it, and this is obviously a developing story. That means that things are
Yeah.
still going on, and we don't have all of the details. This is I haven't seen anything going to the Burbank studio. We can speculate on because they should be busy with other properties.
Sure.
For instance, Frozen 3 comes to mind,
Right.
and Zootopia 2 and all of that. But okay, the new studio has some interesting advantages, and this is what gives me hope. Vash, you and I spoke a little bit before, and we'll have a lot to talk about here. Though technically
Absolutely.
not overseas, Vancouver is close enough to Burbank for corporate oversight. That's right. Vancouver is north of Washington. It's across the border there, but it's still not far enough away that you have a time zone difference. I don't think Vancouver, British Columbia, is a different time zone than Pacific time. My sources inside describe Malcolm Pierce as a talented guy with a good personality who somehow managed to create an equally talented team. That is the kind of thing that we have been looking for at Disney for a while. He served as an animator on Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, and Big Hero 6, and a supervising animator on the original Moana. Also, being in Canada, the team is shielded from the, I've tried to avoid using this word woke SJW nonsense that has
Right.
infected the animation studios in Burbank. Not verified by the Vancouver studio, appears to be non-union, which poses significant financial and operational advantages.
That's
We were watching.
huge.
We were watching Chris Gore. He just did he was on a panel on Critical Drinkers channel Vash, I just watched it, but I'm wondering if you can repeat some of the points that Chris talked about with the struggles that Disney Animation Burbank has been having.
I mean, it's been huge. The D files actually goes into this quite in depth, and if you guys want to check that out, I mean, the first thing you should do after watching this video is go back on the D files and read those if you have not, because it really breaks down what's been going on internally in Burbank in excruciating detail ever since John Lasseter was excommunicated out of the company, if you would. But Chris Gore was not very optimistic about talking about this. I mean, he saw this as kind of the death of Burbank, really, and that they might be, in fact, be being punished for what happened with Wish. And to be honest, I mean, that's kind of what it feels like. This whole quote about partner up on Moana, to take something that originated in that studio and take the sequel away from them and put it towards another studio. I mean, that's a massive deal right there. I mean, that's got to be soul crushing,
right? To a foreign studio, even though it's North American, it's still a foreign studio, which is something that the entire industry is pointed to right now. The Super Mario Brothers movie, for instance, I believe that was animated mostly in France. That's something that Chris Meledandri probably would not have a problem with. It's also why they were probably able to keep costs down low. One of the things that Chris said on Open Bar, which is Critical Drinkers stream show, he said that essentially animators are actors and they know that, and so they're trying to do this thing where they say that if you are going to animate a character, you essentially need to have the same immutable characteristics of that character. So you have to have, I guess, someone who is Samoan or at least Pacific Islander,
right,
and female in order to animate Moana. I'm extrapolating the last half of that there. I would assume that creates a large struggle here for creating a story.
Well, of course. Well, think about the talented animators who have worked on these projects before. I mean, most of them are probably going to be disproportionately white. If you have that mandate where you have to have represented the person that you're animating, and if you're moving content towards direction where you're going to, highlight whether it be people of color or people of various ethnicities, races, genders, ideologies, what have you, well, now you have a situation where a lot of those legacy animators are no longer qualified for those positions. And so that's, I'm sure, creating a huge struggle, and maybe why a lot of these animators who have given us such great films, of the last decade, may no longer be there.
Yep. And I'll add just to close out Alan's story before we get on to more of the history here and more of what's going on. If I weren't so pessimistic about Disney, I would say this Vancouver studio is a brilliant move. It could potentially preserve Walt's legacy by hiding it like Snow White in the forest terrain of Vancouver. Knowing Disney, at some point, the evil queen will find her way to the Great White North, poison apple in hand. While the new studio may have solved the animation problem, it didn't solve the story problem. This is good because the animation was not there for Wish. It was there for Strange World. I'm going to emphasize this. As a person who really did not like Strange World, the animation for Strange World was actually pretty good. The animation was not there for Wish. Wish was bland. And to be fair to the California studio, it sounds like they didn't have much time in order to put that together.
Yeah, so we're thinking 6 months for that?
Yes, 3 to 6 months in order to animate a Disney theatrical animated film. I don't know if that means that they retooled it at some point, because I still think that thing probably cost $200 million. It wasn't set up for success on the music side either. They got a pop singer, they got a pop writer to do the music for it, and it really came out as forgive me, I don't want to insult, but it's low tier pop stuff, very forgettable music, other than the fact that it's attached to a Disney film.
Oh, sure. But I don't know. I mean, staying within that $200 million budget when you're crunching 6 months out from the deadline, I don't know. I mean, I think that they may have ballooned there. We just don't know about it. Again, I'm speculating at that point, but we can definitely see the quality diminishment with that film as opposed to, earlier entries into the canon. Like you said, even Strange World, well, maybe not the best story. We'll talk about that, of course, on the show as well.
Right.
Better animation.
Yeah, so let's talk about this guy, David G. Derrick Jr., to direct the Moana series for
Right.
Disney Plus. This is from January 24th of 2022 from NerdBot. This is we're going to an older article because we want to point out that Disney did announce this Vancouver studio just the same way that they announced Pixar Canada back in the day when they were testing the waters. I think that was closer to 2019, 2018.
Mm.
Uh, Specifically for Spark Shorts, which, by the way, if you think that Spark Shorts started on Disney Plus, nope, they were testing that out before Disney Plus and then repurposed them there after.
Oh.
This one by Mary Ann Butler. We can totally understand if you forgot Disney Plus was working on Moana the series. It'll be animated. It'll be an animated continuation of the Princess of Motunui's adventures following her 2016 film. David G. Derrick will direct. Now, I pointed out that David G. Derrick has the title of head of story over on Strange World. So I had assumed that head of story meant that this person was the head of creating the story for Strange World. No, I'm hearing from multiple sources. One, that is not a creative position, and another one tells me that it is kind of a creative position, but it's more of a collaboration kind of thing. It's the person in charge of storyboards getting you that title of story. So we were accurate in saying that David G. Derrick was the head of story, but we don't want to leave anyone with the impression that this is the person who like outlined the entire story. However, storyboarding is critical in animation, so it's more than nothing. It's less than saying that this is the person that formulated the entire story. So, want to add that clarification there.
And I think a very very good clarification as well.
Yeah,
And still,
I would much rather spend the time to be correct on this stuff
of
than
course.
to try to insist that we're right.
Oh, I absolutely 100%. I mean, honestly, we are reacting to this stuff in live time. Doesn't necessarily provide us the subtle nuances, and it's
Yeah.
so it's a good thing that we're
Yes.
able to correct these things afterwards.
Yes.
But it's the point still stands though that he has never directed a film before, and this is crucial because we now have to take an animated series. And I mean, apparently the voice cast hasn't even been nailed down. We'll get to that in a moment as well.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment.
In 9 months, guys,
Yeah.
this is huge. And I understand they started work on this in 2020, but 9
Right.
months going from this to this with a brand new director, this is a monumental task.
Right. So let's talk about that. This is, this tweet from 2022, January of 2022. So we're now 2 years out and some change. David G. Derrick will direct Walt Disney Animation Studios' Moana series for Disney Plus. He first joined with Moana, and which deepened his connection with his family's Samoan roots. I would say that Disney Animation is probably very glad to have a person with Samoan roots in charge of a Moana property. But this was definitely part of the Vancouver studio. This one from Laughing Place points out that this is where is it right here? Derrick and his story team are in development. The recently announced new Walt Disney Animation Studios Vancouver, which will be the production home for the series, is ramping up their staffing as the studio nears its official 2022 opening.
Right.
And there's even a link here to Walt Disney Animation Studios Vancouver and on hiring up there. Now, this is again something that I did not want to focus on too much when we were talking about Pixar laying off maybe 300 people or allowing contracts to expire at Pixar. They're trying to quote unquote right size that organization to something closer to under 1,000. While that was going on, the Vancouver studio is ramping up on a factor of 3, a factor of 4. Yikes! So this is not just a laying off. This is a shifting of production across the border to Vancouver.
Right. And as Film Threat actually notes out, they might be non-union, which as they do relay, that would be a huge cost savings endeavor as well. So that might be why a lot of this stuff happened at the same time, is to reduce operating costs.
And I had speculated that a staff of 400 might actually be 2 productions. I'm hearing from sources that no, considering the timeline, that 400 is probably just 1 production going on at the Vancouver studio right now. So that's good to know and good to understand. And I don't think Vancouver is going to be a bad place to work for these people. I wish them all of the success in the world on this. But let's do 2 more items here.
Please.
before we get into that.
Mhm.
So we did point out that they don't have the original staff that they had for Moana. Moana had Musker and Clements, which were their animation legends that were in charge of this, as well as Don Hall, who I don't know if Don Hall is still at the company, but if you go to the D files, it looks like Don Hall was disrespected on the production of Raya and the Last Dragon, or he was given a very hard time because he was the wrong color to contribute, and
It would appear so.
the wrong color and sex in order to have a valid opinion on Raya and the Last Dragon.
Right.
I don't know about you, but if somebody comes to me and they happen to be a different color and sex than me, but I know that they have a lot of expertise, I'm going to soak up all the mentorship I can when I get that opportunity. In this case, it looks like the original directors are gone. The original head of story, the original script writers are not there.
Yep.
And Lin-Manuel Miranda is not attached to this film.
Right.
Some are viewing that as a positive. I would say in Moana in particular, it was a positive. There were a lot of really good songs in Moana. You're Welcome comes to mind. That is a very Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh yeah, and it's what has made that movie as big as it is, and what has kept it on repeat ever since it came out on Blu-ray, and especially when it came out on Disney Plus. I mean, it's the songs that really transformed that movie, and that's why they brought back so many of the people attached to the original Moana. Without Lin-Manuel Miranda, though, that's a huge loss, I would think.
Yeah, and also music is a cultural slow release bomb that goes off every now and then.
Right.
If you want to have a 100-year studio, you need to have music in your films. Great Mouse Detective. People know Great Mouse Detective, but you gotta really push back to be like, what was Ratigan? What was the song? What are the lyrics to Ratigan? Do you know them, Vash?
Oh, I do not.
Exactly. However, here we are nearing 100 years. We're quite a few years out from 2037, but everybody generally knows what Someday My Prince Will Come sounds
Absolutely.
like.
Yep.
So that music aspect is critical for Disney in their quote unquote long game here. So
Of course.
I hope the music's good, but here we are. Oh, by the way, Mark Mancina, who is doing it sounds like he's doing the composition for it. I don't know if he's doing the music itself, as in the lyrical music here, but he's solid. He's got a good track record.
Absolutely.
He's had a great career here. But here is the problem that we're seeing. Dwayne Johnson is in talks to reprise Maui for Disney's animated Moana 2 live action pick, bound to shift dates. So it sounds like they're delaying Moana, the live action, which the last earnings call, or maybe this was a year ago on the earnings call, they were promising, oh yes, we're definitely doing a live action Moana, and it's going to be as similar as possible.
Yeah.
Moana.
Well, I mean, why screw up? Why mess with success? I mean, that's kind of what they're saying right there. But this was going to come out on June 27th, 2025. And this is kind of why we made the joke in the live stream that you could literally, if they stick to that timeline, you could literally watch a trailer for the original Moana in live action when you're watching Moana 2 in November. It was absurd. It looks like that's going to be shifted, though.
Right, and I've often joked that by the time they get to Frozen 4, they will have the live action Frozen
Yes.
ready to go there.
Absolutely.
So this to me, and we can go into the details of the article, but this is essentially. And by the way, I think this has been updated now that Alii Cravalho, forgive me for mispronouncing your name there, that she's also in talks. This says to me two things. One, I think that the idea of them doing a Moana series without the original actors, that's a little tenuous to me. What they usually do with these Disney Plus series is they have them in there for just a minute or a couple of scenes in order to solidify that they are in fact in the series. And they can have FaceTime, which in order to have FaceTime, you don't have to have the original actor or actress in there. They might appear but not talk much. Again, looking at Pixar popcorn, there's a lot of Buzz and Woody, consolidated those there in my mind. There's a lot of those two on screen, but not necessarily using the voices of Tom Hanks in Buzz Lightyear.
Right.
Of course, with Woody, they can always use Jim Hanks, his brother. Don't mean to ruin the magic for anybody there.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Got it.
So with this, I wonder, one, if they never talked to Dwayne Johnson for the Moana the series animation.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain they got Miss Cravalho for the Moana the series, but I wonder if this is in fact that they did not have a theatrical component of that contract.
I,
That
I,
this was never intended to go to theaters, that they never had any intention originally of putting this in theaters, and now they have to renegotiate, because you don't put something like this in theaters without giving $7 production and The
well,
Rock a phone call.
Well, but you can do the opposite, at least in Scarlett Johansson's case. Anyway,
Oh,
I bring it as a joke, but in the Scarlett Johansson case, it did bring up the fact that these contracts are very, very different, right?
yes.
And pay and so forth, and exhibitor relation money, and that all kind of factors into that. I agree with you, Jonas. They didn't have a plan in place to make this theatrical in any way possible.
So let's wrap this up. I can't believe we have even talked about this for as long as we have, but there is so much to unpack here.
Information.
The story is still developing. If I were the animators in California, I would be worried. If I were any animator, not just Disney animation, but I would be concerned about my position at this
Very much so.
because
Very much so.
because Pixar right now, they have Inside Out 2 just around the bend, and I don't think Disney is going to endanger Inside Out 2 by officially announcing layoffs at Pixar. But when Bob Iger says that they somehow found additional costs that they could cut right about the time that they say that they are moving feature animation to Vancouver, moving being the operative term here. Maybe that's me overstating what's going on here, or maybe it's not. So I want to ask you, Vash, what do you think is going on right now? What is your read on this situation?
My read is that I think Bob Iger recognizes that Burbank is just simply not up to the task. I think that's what it is. And not only that, but he wants to reduce costs as much as possible. So shifting productions to Vancouver, I think, is the first step. And maybe Disney not animating, animated films in Southern California anymore, which would be, Disney's been doing that since the 1930s.
Yeah.
That would be a huge, huge monumental shift, but maybe it's one that he feels is necessary in order to keep these costs down, because they have ballooned. $200 million for Wish, and we've seen the results of that. That is completely unacceptable. So I understand the mentality, but it really is unfortunate that this even needs to take place. At the same time, though, we know via the D-files that Burbank is it's a cesspool right now. So maybe something could really blossom in Vancouver. We'll just have to wait to see what the products are like.
Yeah, as far as that, the evil queen that's referenced in the end of that film thread article there, I hate to call someone evil, but I do feel like that was a reference to Jennifer Lee, who's the current head of Disney Animation. A lot of the things that Film Threat has reported are consistent with what we know. I'm not saying there's not new stuff there. There is a lot of new stuff there in the D-files.
Yes. But it's what we've heard for years.
And it's also evident in the output of Disney Animation post Lasseter that there's a diminishing focus on story and more of a focus on mental health, which is always dangerous. Mental health is good, but when you talk about mental health stories with children's animation, it needs to be children's animation and also family, but it needs to appeal to children. There's this dangerous aspect of pushing odd narratives that don't quite fit. Inside Out 2 is going to be about mental. This is not Jennifer Lee. Inside Out 2, incorporating anxiety as the embodiment of anxiety as a character. I feel like that's a dangerous area that I don't have faith that they have someone there that can thread the needle on that being a positive story about dealing with and getting rid of anxiety.
And that's the thing too with all this stuff, right? Look, if you had a John Lasseter doing that, hey, maybe we can thread that needle, right? Because he's a guy who understands how to do those, how to walk those tightropes because of his vast experience, right? If you were to tell me that, hey, John Musker and Ron Clements are coming back to do Moana 2 to help, turn this thing from a series into a movie, we got Lin-Manuel Miranda coming back, I'd be far more optimistic. Unfortunately, a lot of those amazing talents are simply not there. Now we're shifting from different studios and so forth. We're doing it on expedited time schedules, like 9 months, with new directors. I don't know, man. I'm not as optimistic.
If I were David Derrick right now, if I have what it takes to make a film, and I'm David D. Derrick, which I don't know that he does have what it takes because he hasn't made one yet. then I would look at that situation. Moana had 3 directors of record, and 2 of them were animation legends, and one of them is classic Disney. So they had a pretty good deck there of people working together to create a great film. And I think the Disney Story Group was still intact at the time. I have no visibility on whether or not the Story Group exists in form or function, because it might literally exist, but not actually exist in practically speaking.
Right.
The things that I worry about here is Jennifer Lee involved? Is this far enough away from her that she's not going to be involved in the daily aspects of this? You're going to have a tight timeline here in order to finish something, in order for Disney to get their paws on it and see if there's any trouble spots that need to be fixed. And the temptation from Disney is going to be putting one of their quote unquote veteran animators on here in order to help Mr. Derek work on this. But
I would hope so.
If I would hope that he has the support, but if that support is from someone who's going to ruin your film, he's got a card he can play here to try to push off some of that, and that if they look like they're taking away the director chair, because we've seen this in the past with Raya and the Last Dragon, and trying to take the director position and demoting them to co-director. In order to change get that Lasseter stink off of it, if you believe what's going on with the D-Files, which I generally do.
Yeah.
If you want to play that race card in order to keep the white lady's hands off of it, maybe that's a shrewd move. Or if you need help, take it. What we all want is for Disney to return to the form that it should be. And Moana 2, a movie about a pretty princess who's strong. She's not a princess. She's the chief's daughter. Well, I guess she's the chief now. She put her conch on top of the island there before going and wayfaring. But I want to see this movie succeed. Why? Because my children love Moana 2. Moana, I should say. It's a great movie with great themes. And when my kids want to see this, I don't want to say, it's one of those films where they're pushing all that garbage on it. I want this film to be good. So I'm wishing this guy all the success in the world. I'm not wishing that it succeeds despite of things being in there. I want it to be a good film, that we don't have to it was okay. Vash, you have anything else before we wrap this up?
Moana is a huge franchise for them. We're seeing Moana just put all kinds of places in the parks. Obviously Epcot, but also the Polynesian was rethemed to Moana, right? It's a big franchise for them, as Bob Iger said in the call. 1 billion hours, watch minutes in the life of Disney Plus, or at least Moana on that platform. So it's a huge thing for them. I'm wishing them the best. This is a monumental task, though. Usually you need some veteran guys in here. I'm just not seeing them. We'll just have to wait and see, obviously. But I don't know. I have a lot of reservations about this, and I think a lot of people who really understand this this industry do as well.
Yeah, and I would agree. This is a Disney has pulled out some great films, some films that have stood the test of time from quote unquote lesser studios. A Goofy movie comes to mind. I actually really like DuckTales, Treasure of the Lost Lamp.
Mulan.
And those came from Mulan. And there was an era where they were giving Disney animation studios cast-offs, and they still spun gold out of straw. But that being said, we would love to turn this to those of you who have been listening to this video. What are your thoughts on this? Of course, like this video. If you like that this conversation is happening, consider sharing it out. The last time we produced one of these videos, it was on the Pro channel, and we had some people reach out to us. So if you want to reach out to us, please do so. Our Twitter handles are above, and of course, if you like what we're throwing down, if you want to follow this, then please consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.